said we're more connected than ever before, but we're more lonely than ever before. I'll say that again. We're more connected than ever before, but we're more lonely than ever before. So if we look at the way our society has gone, we've got a loneliness epidemic, and that goes for men. Now, the biggest killer of men under the age of 35 or 40, I think it's 35, is suicide. And one of the reasons being is that I think they did a study in America, but it's very similar to the UK, where they said in the 60s and 70s, men had 3 best friends, I believe. Like there were 3 buddies that they'll go, they'll do things with. Now it's 1. It's 1 on 0, and that is the majority of the population. People used to look at loneliness as something that happened to old people, but now it's happening to younger people. Why? Because we're losing the things that used to be the touch points of community, or the touch points of people coming together. So it was church or the mosque or the temple, or it was, you would go to, I don't know, bowling alleys. You would do things and activities together. Now there's less and less of that happening, and that is causing a real problem. And even going beyond same sex or ties based on friendships, we can talk about relationships and the loneliness and how people are not marrying and people are not coming together. So this is a societal problem, and particularly for men, it's very important, as I touched on in the last session, that especially when men were coming up, men needed to be part of a group, and it usually had an older man, right? It had an older person, and there would be some form of an initiation, and some communities do this, okay? But now that's gone, and because of how society and families are being pulled apart, there's less and less of these things happening. So there's gaps that are starting to appear, and it's very important that you do have that unit and you do have those people that you can talk to, because it can cause all manner of problems.
Okay, so I think that you've probably looked at it in the macro, which is relevant. But I'm listening to you speak, and I'm seeing, okay, even when there are situations where people are in community, or they are in families, or they are in the church, or they are in a group of men, there's still the people that are still committing suicide. A lot of them, they do have friends. I've watched the video. It's probably a couple months ago, and it was like a few people talking about their friend that committed suicide, and they were all together. Everything seemed fine, everything was well, and then this person committed suicide, and none of them knew what that person was even in that position, or that person was going through those things in their mind. So my thing when I'm thinking about into me you see, is you can still be around a group of people, and you can still be lonely. You can still have people around you, and still there's a lack of intimacy. So from your perspective, what do you feel is preventing men, as you spoke about men, and you said, that they're the highest group that's going through suicide, and I know that to be true. Why do you feel that men that have got the opportunity to be intimate, men that have got the opportunity to share, men that have got, people that are around them that love them, that are they're not being intimate? Why they're not sharing? Why they're not allowing people to see into them?
There's a couple of reasons. We can literally stay on this one question the whole show, because there's a lot of reasons. But to make it simple, and this is coming not only from research but lived experience, it's the way that men are socialized, and it's the way that men feel that they have to be stoic, that they have to maintain. And it's interesting. I remember I was on a bus going to work one day, and I'll never forget this. And there was a little boy and a little girl. I don't know if they were twins, but they were together. They were playing around, and the little girl fell over. So this was on the bus. The bus was quite rocky, and the mum was cooing over the little girl. "Oh, darling, are you okay?" and whatnot, what have you. And then the bus rocked again, and the little boy fell over, and he was crying, and he was like, "Shh, boys don't cry. Be a man. Man up. Suck it up." I was looking at, and it had such a profound impact. I was like, the two instances were the same. You've got the little girl that's hurt herself. She gets the care and attention. Then you've got the little boy who gets hurt, and his emotions get rejected. So what ends up happening? Men have learned to stuff our emotions down. We stuff them down deep within ourselves. And as I said, I'm not talking only from research, I'm talking from lived experience, because it's not socially accepted to show certain types of emotions. As I said last time, and I'll say again, anger is the bodyguard of pain. It's socially acceptable for a man. So if a man, just say a man lost his mother, it's more socially acceptable for the man to go to a pub, have a drink, punch the guy in the face, swear, and paint the town red, cause a riot, than for him to go in that same pub and break down in tears and just all right. So what's ended up happening, and this is what the danger with I think, and again, to gender this just slightly, I think it's more socially acceptable for women to be able to communicate and be able to talk about their feelings. But what happens with a lot, and again, we got to understand biology as well, the reason why we cry. And I know it sounds crazy, but I think people don't understand why we cry and why we have these, because again, it's all by design, right? When we look at our nervous system, you've got the central nervous system, but there's two branches of that nervous system. You've got the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS, that acts as the accelerator of the car. And then you've got the PNS, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the brake. So really quickly, if, for example, I'm in my home, I'm looking in my garden, and I see a 7-foot Siberian tiger jump over the fence, my SNS, that's where my eyes start to dilate. My heart starts beating because my body's getting ready to fight off this threat. Okay, that goes away. Then something called the PNS kicks in, which is where you calm down, you breathe, and the PNS activates when you're in like a meditative state. Now, I'm trying to deal with things that are short term, like a tiger. It's not designed to be long term, to deal with long term problems. Now, what ends up happening is, and this is something I learned later in life. I know it sounds crazy, but this is something I had to learn as a practitioner. When somebody cries, that is forcing the body. It's like an override to force the body to activate the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system. Because when you've got all those hormones like adrenaline and cortisol flowing through your system, your body says, "Oh, this is not good." You break down in tears, and it literally washes all the toxins away. Right? Now, why am I saying this? Because men, we've been socialized not to cry. We've been socialized not to show any emotion. So imagine, Herman, I'm sure you've got a wonderful car. I'm sure it's like a BMW or a Mercedes or something like that, or sports car, Ferrari. Let's go Lamborghini.
It's something nice. Yeah.
When you look at the is it the odometer or the accelerator?
Yes.
You've got that red part. Right at the end when you're pushing the engine. So imagine you put the clutch on and you're throttling that accelerator. So the car's not going forward, but the engine's revving. What starts in the red for too long? What happens? The engine blows. They blow the gasket, and that's what a lot of men are like. A lot of men have their odometer in the red because they're not allowed to let go of the clutch or put the brake on. You've just got that. So when the man either commits suicide or he punches somebody in the face or explodes, it's because all those emotions. Remember, emotions are energy and motion. If you got, it has to go somewhere. So the man is squashing it down, but it's still there. And what ends up happening is that man hits a crisis point where his engine's now gone past the red, and then he's like, I need to end it because it's too much in my head or there's too much stuff going on for me. And it starts young. And if the young man, and again, for the ladies that are listening as well, this is really important. I'm not saying women don't have this, but I think there's more outlets traditionally within society for this. If a young man's been told, like that little boy on the bus, you're not allowed to cry, you're a big man. I have people, and including myself, I used to take pride in not crying. I used to say, I've cried for years. But that is ridiculous because what you're doing is you're stopping yourself having that release, and then it ends up with societal effects, and it has to come out. So this is where you see alcoholism, drugs, sexual promiscuity, because it needs to be sated and satisfied. All right, that's what happens. But if we can, as groups, understand this and start to get that arrow, get that engine from revving and lower it, that is where the healing can take place. And that is what happens because the young man feels, I can't express to my friend, or I can't express to my wife, or I can't express to my dad or my mum because they'll look at me as weak. But in fact, being able to talk about your feelings is one of the strongest things that you can do. That is true. Punching someone in the face, and I say this to the young people all the time, punching somebody in the face is not strength. That is not strength. Strength is being able to deal with yourself.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm like, I mean, listening to you talk, I'm definitely, I mean, the analogies are really good because analogies make it really tangible in a sense of, you know, the animal and you're in danger, you know, you need to get ready, you know, but if you're always in that state, I guess that's going to be affecting your health. That's going to be affecting your mind. That's going to be affecting your perceptivity. That's why people are probably very touchy. That's why people, you know, you don't need to do much and they go off the handle because they're in that place. And I guess social media and just the constant watching things, comparing things, everything's always exciting. It's not having that place of being calm that can affect you as well.
Absolutely.
And you know what you're saying is really true around young people being socialized or conditioned to be a certain way. You know, as young boys, you know, they play with guns. You know, when they're young, you know, they play with cars. They play with those different kind of objects. But when, you know, little girls, they're playing with dolls. They're playing with, you know, someone that's supposed to be like a little human. You know, when they're having, you know, they're caring and they're developing that aspect of them. So it's something that's even happening as they play, you know, and they're talking, you know what I mean? Like so I mean, even just thinking about that, because when you're playing with a gun or you're playing with a spaceship or you're playing with a car, really there's no practice of relationship really, or interjecting or role modeling, you know. But with the girls, they're getting to do that. And what I'm thinking is, as we grow up and we're men then, and we're socialized to be a certain way, we don't speak or we don't share or we find it difficult, or we used to have three best friends, but now we don't have three best friends. And maybe the only way to talk to someone is to go and see a therapist or go to see a counselor. But then there's the stigma around counseling and therapy and so forth for men. It almost seems like men a lot of times are in a dead end, because it's almost like there needs to be a breakdown of that reality or that image that one may be upholding through socialization and conditioning, that they've behaved a certain way, they don't cry, they don't this, and then really that needs to be broken for them to have freedom. That needs to be broken for them to have an outlet, for them to be able to let go of the pressure and to be able to be themselves. And I feel that might be a challenge for a lot of men. You know, that might be a challenge where they might not even know that they need to do that, or they might need to go past what they've always done to be able to feel they can speak to someone. They might need to speak to their partner. They might need to speak to their lady. And I feel that the challenge there is that sometimes as a man, you feel that you need to be in control, or you feel that you need to, you know, be handling your pressure well. And if you show that you are under pressure, you show that you're struggling, it's almost like it's akin to you're not being a man. Instead of realizing that you and I were human beings before we're men. Do you know what I mean? And having that caveat as a human being means that you are prone to have the same spectrum of emotions, the same spectrum of feelings. You're prone to lose control at times, or feel overwhelmed and so forth. So if that's understood, then it could be practiced. And I think it's being able to have those environments and those relationships that you can. But I'm there thinking about, okay, we're here both speaking. You're speaking fluently about these matters. You're speaking about them in a sense of you've studied them. You're a practitioner. You're helping other people to apply this in their workspaces. But my question for you is, with all the knowledge that you have and all the understanding that you have, how do you cope with applying the knowledge that you know to go against the conditioning that you've had? Is it something that you do easily, or are you still struggling with the reality that you've had to acclimatize to, like other men that are in society as well?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Herman, you asked very good questions, sir. That is a tough question. I mean, the way I look at things is that I think a lot of the times it's not that. Okay, let me make sure I'm being coherent in my thinking, because I'm thinking about this as I'm talking. So I think the issue that we've got here is that the feelings are the feelings, right? But there needs to be certain tools. That is, when I deal with young people, it's tools, it's the way to communicate. And I think a lot of men, and again, I don't want to generalize, but from my lived experience and seeing what's out there in the world, have not been given those tools. So if you, for example, like myself, you come from a single parent home, okay? In fact, it's half and half. So up until 12, both parents; after 12, not. So I had the best of both worlds.
Yes.
If you have come from a home where, just say, and the thing is, this is where we talk about, trauma. Something big has happened. So again, and I'm not railing against single parent homes, but if, for example, let's take it back to the child, because this is where a lot of this stuff comes from, childhood. If, for example, you've got a child in a home where the parents have got divorced, okay, or the parents are not together, or one of the parents have passed away, and you've got the single mum or the single dad, because it's not only always single mums, who talks to the child and says, little Carl or little Herman or little John, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to, angry. It's okay to deal with the multitude of different emotions. Research has shown those people can, what we call regulate. They can regulate themselves. They can grow up, and yes, they've suffered through trauma, but they've been given the tools to process that particular trauma. But what happens not is that the young person, so for example, let me talk about myself, parent goes, young person, and again, not blaming my mother or whatever, because I stayed with my mother, but she was not able to give me the tools to be able to understand and process what is going on. And now when you look at child development, this is really important. Children up until I think the age of 16, it's what we call magical thinking or black and white thinking. They blame themselves because they think they're in control of the universe. So they blame themselves. It's almost like slight narcissism, but that's the way a child develops. That's why they believe in Santa Claus and all these types of things. So if the young person is not being able to be given the tools to deal with it, what they do is they lock it in their subconscious. They lock it deep in their subconscious. But then this comes out and causes problems later on. So going back to the question about, have I found it difficult to deal with? There's some people who have locked their feelings so deeply in that vault, they don't even know they have them anymore. I'm sure you've met some people like I have, who say, I don't have feelings. Some people will say things like, you know what, nothing bothers me, nothing stresses me out. You can see like a car crash, nothing stresses me out, right? Because what they've done, and this is where the trauma comes into it, what they've done is they've completely shut it down. Shut it down. Because I'll tell you what, sorry, going back onto your point, this really ties in. When I was working with gang members, this is so good. When I was working with gang members in East London, all right, them sometimes they would say to me, my friend got stabbed. My friend got stabbed. And I asked them, how do you feel about that? I don't know. Head hoodie up. I don't know. Innit? It is what it is, isn't it? We're just going to get that guy in it. Right? Now, when we talk about going back to the nervous system, we've got something called fight or flight responses. We've got three, right? You've got the fight response, which is the aggression. You want to fight people. You want to punch them in the face. You've got the flight response, which is I want to just get out, go away. I can't deal with this. I need to run away. And then you've got the freeze response. Now, always used to say when I train people, the freeze response is the most dangerous one. Why? Because what tends to happen, we squash it down, squash it down, squash it down. Like that young man, he's compartmentalized it, but then someone steps on his trainer or someone looks at him, and then boom, like dynamite, blows up. And as I said last time, people say, I don't understand why he killed that guy because he stepped on a trainer. Or I don't understand why, because the emotions have to go somewhere. And what ends up happening is, so basically to answer your question, if they're at a point where they don't even acknowledge their emotions, or they don't think it's so deep, there's nothing you can do. And what you said rightly, Herman, is someone has to almost go through crisis. They have to go through a breakdown, although breakdown is not the technical term, but they have to go through an emotional breakdown or burnout. And I'm talking about the extremes of gangs, but this happens in work. This happens in work. where you know, something happens to you in work and then you're bedridden. Sometimes it manifests as physical illness. So the older people, they're getting chronic illnesses, they're getting, you know, rheumatoid arthritis, all these different illnesses, because the body, what is happening, you're locking up so much, it's expressing itself through physical illness or expressing itself through alcoholism. So you said something interesting. We almost have to get to that point of breaking down to break through, because then hopefully if you catch the young man or woman, they say, you know, something's wrong with me, I can't sleep, I've got, you know, these issues. And then you could say, these are the tools. Let's alleviate what's going on inside of you, right?
Yeah.
And that's, unfortunately, that's sometimes the only way that somebody can get to that place. And sometimes I have a good friend of mine who went through a breakdown about 4 or 5 years back and had to leave his job. But he said, Karl, you know what? Having the breakdown was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to address everything that's going on inside. So my job, because I deal with young people, is to try and stop them from getting to that point. And by them with the tools and helping them to alleviate what's going on inside. So that, hopefully that'll answer your question.
It does to some extent, because you externalized it, but it was about the reason I asked the question was, you know, as a practitioner and understanding and having emotional intelligence and, you know, being emotionally literate and having a greater understanding of what is going on or what has helped to position you in that way. Is it still a challenge to apply that, to come against everything that you've already learned? Do you know what I mean? Because the reason I ask this is because I find that even though I do the work that I do, even though I work with young people, even though I do mentoring and do training, and I help leaders and help different practitioners to reconnect with themselves, understand themselves more, understand some of the challenges to go through and so forth. When it's in my own personal life, at times I am still struggling. At times I am not able to put that into practice. I am still struggling with understanding myself. And it's only through me going through therapy and me going through having that safe space where I can explore my thoughts and I can. That's when I'm seeing that the things are in the subconscious. That's when I'm seeing when I am having to share my story and then it's being analyzed by a professional and they're just asking questions and they're just saying, what do you think about that when that happened? Or, you know, tell me a bit more about that incident. That is what is helping me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it'd be great if everyone could have this experience, but I know not everyone can have it or would have it. I mean, I've had to break past lots of taboos and lots of things in myself when I thought I don't need counseling or I don't need, you know, to have a therapist, you know, but it's only through going through all of those things where I was seeing there was some level of dysfunction in my thinking that I needed some help outside of myself. So I just really wanted to find out how is your play in that as well?
Internally, that's a very good question. It's the Solomon paradox, where we're so much better at giving people advice than giving ourselves advice. I'm a human being. You know, I'm a human being, and as I've grown older and I've grown wiser, I realized that, you know, I have to look deep within myself. And as you said, you're right. The reason why we're better at giving advice to people outside of ourselves than ourselves is because we're more objective. We haven't got that emotional baggage, you know. So it's easy to say to your friend, you know, get over that girl, she was no good, or, you know, get over that guy, or go for another job or whatnot. But you don't have that emotional baggage. I am just as human as you. But I think you know, you've hit on something. As like yourself, as practitioners, we can know all the theories in the world. So you've got the head knowledge, but there's heart knowledge as well. And that's the difficulty from getting it to go down from your head to your heart. So as I gave the example, you know, I realized within myself that, you know, the experiences I had in childhood really did affect me. And for many, many years, I pushed them away and pushed them away until I couldn't push them away anymore. And what we've got to show is especially, and I have to gender it again, especially with men, we've got to show loving kindness and grace. Because we don't want to deal with it. It's obvious because it's so painful. It's so painful to go and dig deep within yourself because sometimes we feel we dig so deep within ourselves, we won't come back up again.
Yeah.
That it's that thing of where we feel like we're going to suffocate. We joked earlier where you said about the scuba gear, but you're absolutely right. What a therapist does is the therapist is like a trained diver that dives with you and makes sure you can come back up, that you don't, because it's very easy, especially if you've been through very traumatic events. It's very easy to go down there and to suffocate or feel like you're about to suffocate, right?
Yeah.
So talking about me internally, I've had to do a lot of work on myself, and having children as well made me realize I had to do a lot of work on myself. And again, when we look, this is where I'll take it back to the start about intergenerational trauma. Somebody said something I love about parenting. First, you idolize your parents, then you demonize your parents, and then you humanize your parents. I'll say that. First, you idolize your parents, you demonize them, then you humanize them.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Parents, our parents, our grandparents, because some things you don't realize have been going through your family line for years, for generations, for it could be 100 years or hundreds of years. We look at, for example, the royal family, right? No disrespect to them, but you can so see what has been happening is almost repeating itself over and over and over again. And you know, the royal family have got so many means and they've got all this money, and sure, they've got access to the best therapists in the world, but there's something that's being passed through the line. And that's because they're human. They're not they're human beings. So going back onto me, because I want to keep. So I realized there were things that happened. So for example, going back to my parents splitting, that I didn't understand, and I had to go through a process where I was angry. I had to go through the process of feeling it, to being angry about it, to realizing that mom and dad are human. Mom and dad, they had their doubts, they had their things. There was things that the 12-year-old Karl didn't understand, but the 35-year-old Karl does understand now because of maturity. But that is a process, and it's a very hard one. So if you've got, especially men, and the joke of it is, we don't even have the map a lot of the times, so we just throw it away, right? So what I would encourage everybody to do is, especially if you don't have the tools, you don't have to do it alone. Go to a therapist. I was very lucky because as part of my training, I had to be in therapy and stuff like that. So I had to do it as part of what I do. So I had my doubts and I had my things, but I realized that it's one of the most beneficial things that have ever happened to me, because it makes a better practitioner. It makes you a better parent. It makes you a better person. All right. Not bad, right. And this is another thing. Oh, if I do therapy, I'm mad. No, you're not mad. You're saying if someone runs over your leg and your leg is broken, you don't say, you know, just suck it up, walk it off. You deal with it. You get the plaster. And that's all therapy is. It doesn't mean you're mad. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that you've gone through a particular situation and that you need help in processing it. That's all it is. And I think once we get over, and I'm sorry to say, especially in the more particular communities, this is more prevalent in the communities or the more traditional communities. Crazy. It just means that, because the worst thing you don't want to if you know you come from a particular line or lineage where certain things have happened in your family, the best gift you can give to your kids is to make sure you don't pass it on. And when I look at these kids that I deal with, and you know, people don't like using the word generational curse, right? It's a bit of a touchy word, but there are patterns, generational, that if you're not aware, will come into your family, and it's your duty and your responsibility as a parent or a carer to stop it and make sure that you not have. Because sometimes I believe I'm fighting problems that were built in the 1800s. You and I are fighting problems built 200 years ago, but it's come to us. And now we get to end it. We get to stop it, right? Or help the individual stop it. So that's what it is. So yeah.
Wow. And I want to say thank you, you know, for your honesty, your vulnerability, and your authenticity, because I believe many of us need to see it, you know, and hear it. You know, there's going to be people that are going to be listening to this now. I can see, you know, Nadia says, thank you for having this conversation. You know, Jesse's commented, you know, and then she's commented, you know, everyone's commented. But the beauty of being able to be privy to a conversation like this is that it helps to it helps to identify things in you, you know, without it being intrusive, because sometimes, you know, when people are helping us, you know, the best friend that we've got, or even I would say for me, it's been my wife, you know, that would say things that are triggering. It's not because it's her, it's just, it's the truth, you know, and a lot of times it's because someone's so close to you, they can be honest with you and they can help you. And that helps you to then identify that issue's there. But then what happens, a lot of people, when they do have those kind of people in their lives, they get rid of them. You know, when it gets too close, they get rid of them, because it's like when you have a cut in it. It's like when you have a cut, you're protecting the cut, you know, like you're putting your hand over it because it hurts, you know. And a lot of times we're living with our cuts not becoming scars, with them not closing, with them not healing, with them, you know, not having skin come over them, and us being able to, yes, it used to hurt, but I've reframed it. I really understand it in a different way. And I feel like what you said around it's our duty really to break the cycle, really to break the cycle, to say it's going to stop at me, this is going to stop at me, whether it's, you know, alcoholism, whether it's poverty, whether it's just self-neglect, whether it's divorce, or, you know, whatever it is, like in the patterns in your family where people don't get along, or they don't have substantive, secure relationships that become foundational for children to grow in. You can say, I'm gonna go against the grain. I'm gonna go against what is normal, what is accepted, and I am gonna be the outlier. I am gonna be the exemplar. I am gonna be the person that's gonna be making a difference. But I feel that really takes courage. I think it takes courage, because even like the conversation we're having now, it takes courage. It takes courage for you to openly reflect, for me to openly reflect, and for people to see the imperfections, or to see that there has been a problem, there has been an issue, and realize that they don't have any more power than to have an opinion, or to say, I want to work with that person, or I don't want to work with that person, or I want to, you know, I want to be closer to that person, or I don't. And it doesn't really matter, you know, and sometimes us being able to repel the wrong people that surrounds us is a good thing, you know. People that shouldn't be around us, or they're not adding value to us, or they're not encouraging us, or they're not helping us to be authentic, then really maybe those are the people that shouldn't be around us anyway. So I think you being able to share, being able to be honest, and I feel the reason why I wanted to even ground our conversation in a sense of people seeing that this isn't just something that you're an expert in this and you've surpassed it and you're fine. It's like, even though we're good at these things, even though we do work with children, or, you know, sometimes working with our own children and being a parent is difficult, you know, sometimes what we say when we're mentoring someone and we're encouraging someone is quite straightforward, because it's subjective. There's no emotions attached. There's no emotional baggage attached. So we've got much more clarity. With our own children, we can struggle to make those relationships. We can struggle to have intimacy. We can struggle, and it's almost like people understanding that there is a humanity to this, and that we as humans, like we can grow. You know, it's like when people say sometimes going through. I heard her say before, and I really say that it's about growing through. You know. And it's like, when I heard her say that Winston Churchill said that, you know, he said, if you're going through hell, don't stop. You know, and I feel that it is powerful and it's truthful. And I feel as individuals, we need to be able to be that. So what I want to do, because we're nearly finishing. Sure. It's been powerful again. It's been powerful. We might need to book in another time.
Trilogy. Let's get the trilogy.
Because what I'm hearing and what I'm realizing is a lot of times it's the women in our lives that really take the brunt of our dysfunction or our trauma. You know, and sometimes, and I'm not speaking the extremes here. I'm not speaking the brunt as in DV and violence. And I'm just speaking just the lack of self-regulation and the lack of emotional regulation, the lack of being able to respond in conversations appropriately, or humility. I think just humility of being able to say, yeah, I've got a problem, or I've got an issue, or there's a challenge here. You know, what would you say, just as I'm just going to give you a chance to say, I'm going to give you one chance to say one thing that the women that are on this call, whether they're mothers, whether they're wives, whether they're, to some of the men that would be going through some of this, or some of the boys that will be going through this, what one thing, coming from a different perspective, because the genders are different, they regulate different, they think different, they operate different, but it's in the difference that we complement each other and bring the best out of each other when we learn to complete instead of compete. So what would you say would be a good thing just for someone that needs to go away and probably in their own life they'll be able to apply that would help them to be able to support someone or to manage their own experience in a better way?
Sure. I'm going to quote a great philosopher called Rocky Balboa. You remember I think it's the first or the second film, right? I think it's the second film. And I love what he said. He said to Adrian, you've got gaps, I've got gaps. Let's come together. All right. You fill my gaps, I fill your gaps. Right. And he also said, oh, Adrian, what are you doing for the next 50 years of your life? But yeah, I wouldn't drop it that way. But I think the most key thing for the ladies or the partners that are listening to this is, sorry, I'm going to bring a pastor into this. A pastor once said to me, when me and my wife were getting married, the pastor was giving us marriage counseling. I'll never forget this. He said, you're not ahead of your wife. She's not behind you, or you're not ahead of each other. You walk side by side. You walk back side by side to the same destination. To the women or the partners, I'd say you need to create a safe space. I think the problem sometimes is, and again, talking from people I know and lived experiences, the woman will see, or the partner will see that there's a problem and say, what's the problem, Karl? What's the problem, Herman? What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? The man feels defensive. The man is like, look, I don't want to talk about this because this scares me. This is too much. And then he pushes them away. A great film, Creed 3. Watch that film. We won't go into it because time's run out. But what I'm saying to you is be patient. Create a safe space and just say, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. Leave it at that. Get that person to feel safe, and when they do talk, you listen, because sometimes as men we don't communicate very well, so we might say something like, I'm just a bit tired. So we might say, oh, he's just tired, like physically fatigued, but I mean I'm tired because of work and the stress and business and all this type of stuff. So he's trying to eke it out. But I think the first step, create that space and let that man know he can relax. You can relax in that space, because what I say this to my wife all the time. When I go outside that door, I'm at war with the world. Right?
Yeah.
It's all that thing. So we need to make the home a safe haven. So if people can do that, and it's not about what's the problem, tell me. That pushes the person away. But if you're like, here, and what do you need? And I create that space. Eventually, if that man feels safe, he will talk. He will talk, but it might take time. But just make that person feel safe. And I think it's not only men, it's women as well. Once they feel safe, that's where we create that, that's where things can get better.
I want to say thank you so much for such an excellent, quality conversation. The comments are powerful. I mean, Paul Chambers saying excellent discussion, powerful and enriching, courageous and authentic. Like it's Eric saying, I think we need a car back for part 3.
Rumble in the Full and Manila, we'll do it like that. Ali and Fraser,
I feel that there's an appetite for this, in a sense of safe spaces. I feel a lot of people are struggling by themselves, and even as a practitioner, even as a leading thinker in mentoring and working with people and so forth, I still understand that I have my flaws and I still struggle even with the knowledge. So imagine people that don't have the awareness. Imagine people that are not privy to some of the things that we're discussing. So their struggle would be heightened because they don't even have the reference points, to even start working through it. So I believe even the conversation, even someone listening to this conversation and them having epiphanies, them having those moments that now they can see and they can be like, oh my gosh, that's me. Or yes, I need to probably consider that, or I need to, operate in a different way. I feel it's really powerful. And just to even just end on just really elaborating on what you said, Like, yeah, if a man feels confronted, a lot of times he will shut down, you know. And sometimes if that conversation isn't in the right context, sometimes, because sometimes a conversation could be in an argument or in something that's not positive, then the truth that is being shared may not get through because of the contention in the moment. And the way that you did share it, I feel it was powerful, you know, walking side by side. And I feel men need to be much more understanding of the women that they're with as well, their children, their daughters, because we do repeat things that we've learned behavior, but if we can move beyond it, then we can help to heal and help others to heal. I want to say thank you, Karl. Thank you for your time. We've gone over, but I feel it's been worth it. Is there anything that you want to share in the sense of what you're doing, and just to point people in the direction where they can find out more about you?
Well, thank you for your time. I loved it again. Herman, honestly, you take me to places where, you know what, it's good. It's good because you ask me questions which are quite deep, but it's enriching. But anyway, I just wanted to say that really quickly. actionareateacher.com. LinkedIn is my social media home. So if anybody want to connect with me, LinkedIn is the main place I'm at. I've got Instas and other stuff, but nah, this is my home. So come and knock on the door. There's some big announcements coming in the next month or two, but I'll keep it there. But stay on LinkedIn if you want to see what's going on in the world of the Action Hero Teacher. So thank you again.
Okay, so thank you. You've been a great guest, Karl Pupé, and
thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you. I'll say share it with someone, share it with a friend, share it with a family member, share it with a partner, share it with someone that would value being able to see this. I mean, I'll post it again and I'll put the link that you can get to it. And I hope that you've enjoyed it. And come back shortly. I'll be back with the other guests talking about these things and having a good time. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Peace.